Have you ever asked yourself the question, how does Germany remember their war dead? Well, to answer this, you don't need to travel to some large war cemetery. You can start by driving through the individual villages, finding the war memorials, the plaques on the wall with the individuals from that town. And that's how you can really get a grasp on the impact that the Great War, World War II had on these German towns. And you'll notice by each one, it's different from the next. The tone is different, from victims to our fallen to our heroes. Each town, each village has an individual way of telling the story of their war dead. And that is the focus point of today's video. We're gonna go check that out. So a lot of these memorials started popping up, especially after World War I. Because of the immense loss that communities felt, they wanted a way to remember and honor their dead and fallen. They started really popping up after World War I. Donations started spending in, and people would erect these memorials, sometimes listing the name of every fallen person from that town. You just have to think about the immense loss that people felt when members of the community never made it back home. So these memorials started popping up, and they kind of had that more of a honor, sacrifice, and to our fallen kind of vibe to them. And then it wasn't until after the Second World War when a lot of these memorials then were updated to reflect the fallen from the Second World War. The grim change in tone kind of changes. It's kind of like our glorious heroes. And then after the First World War, it kind of shifts to our fallen, remember our fallen heroes. And after the Second World War, you kind of start seeing language such as, our fallen victims, our Opfer in German. This memorial behind me is just one of many examples that you'll find in almost every German town, city, or village. Our fallen from the world wars to honor 1914, 1918, 1939, and 1945. You see the different names and what their billets were and the dates that they died, and sometimes also where they died at. For example, here in Stalingrad, or in Russia or France. And as you approach down towards the bottom, you'll see the names of those who are still missing and from what town they're from. Behind me is the Regensburg War Memorial unter der Linden here in the Stadtpark in Regensburg. Unlike other memorials, this one isn't tucked behind a church or in some graveyard. This one's right here in the middle, and it was designed to be seen. It was constructed in the interwar period. So this one was considered interwar art, and it was erected after the First World War. The figures on the statue represent farewell, battle, and death. And it definitely reflects that 19th and early 20th century values they had on this topic, with honor, sacrifice for the nation. It's really cool because this one isn't tucked behind some kind of church. It's in the middle of a city park. It's public, it's meant to be proud, designed to be seen. That's the cool thing about exploring. As I was recording the footage for the memorial here in Regensburg Stadtpark, I just stumbled across this one right here, which was a memorial that I had no idea about it. So just did a little bit of research on it, and I'd like to show you guys it. Come on. So as I just mentioned, I just stumbled across this memorial, and this is actually for ethnic Germans from Russia who were deported. The German text reads roughly, "In Gedanken an Russlanddeutsche Opfer der Vertreibung und Verfolgung, Deportation und Zwangsarbeit." So it translates to "in memory of ethnic Germans from Russia who suffered expulsion, persecution, deportation, and forced labor." So this is definitely a very post-1945 tone. It shifts the focus from soldiers to victims of the war and political violence. And it's here to honor civilian victims of forced displacement and repression during World War II. Yeah, sorry for the rough German there, but this is really interesting here. You can see a wreath was recently laid here, and the text I mentioned is right here. I don't know if you can see it correctly, but if you can read German, if I read it correctly, I'm sorry. But yeah, the things you stumble across when you're exploring history, it's fascinating. So I'm not sure if these memorials here in the park are also related to the war memorial, but I thought they're quite interesting. Like here we have a cross with some kind of cloth over it. Here we have a pillar. And the reason I say I'm unsure because it's difficult to read and my German's not that good enough. So if you guys can read this, let me know if this has anything to do with war memorials. I just thought it was fascinating. For example, like here we got 3 stones laying in the grass. One's covered with water. And you know, you can tell that they have a text here, but it's impossible to make out what it says. This stuff looks really old. If I would have to guess, I would say this is pre-World War I. Who knows, maybe it's a memorial to Franco-Prussian wars or Napoleon wars or Napoleonic wars. Like I said, I have no idea. It's just fascinating. Like here's another one. This one looks to be more religious related, but still quite fascinating. There's also a text, but again, it's really old. I can make out here 1886. It looks to be 1819. So maybe it's depicting somebody's life. It says something mit ihrem Gott ruht hier. So this looks to be a gravestone actually. It appears to be some kind of gravestone. Again, with the dates, looks like 1810 and maybe 1805. It's hard to tell. And the last one that I just saw that caught my eye. Again, I don't know if this is war memorial related, but you know, history like this definitely needs to be remembered because the stuff was built for a reason and that reason was important to those people who built it. So, you know, it should still have some kind of importance. And again, right here, you can see the inscriptions. Can't make out the text, what it says, but yeah, fascinating. This is what's so cool about doing this kind of stuff, making these kind of videos. You research a park, you want to go show one thing and you stumble across all this other historical stuff that you have no idea about. You can drive to any village, any town, and you're always going to find something historical to explore. So here's another example of different kind of memorial. This here is on the side of the road. And it's nothing more than just the names, the dates, in remembrance of the fallen and the missing. So here towards the left, you have the World War I, 1914 through 1918, and then starts the Second World War. And you can definitely see the Second World War took more from this town than the First World War did. And then here at the bottom right, you see the names of the missing. It's just another prime example of how each different memorial is different. Each town has their own version, their own way to remember their dead, their fallen, and their missing. Here is another prime example of a memorial that was erected after World War I to reflect those fallen from the village. This isn't about battles, glory. This is about the individual soldiers, the people from this town who perished during that war. After World War II, the memorial is extended to include the fallen and missing from the Second World War as well. It's another one of those examples where the memorial looks different than any other in the other villages. And it's one of the things that make it really unique is that each individual village has its own taste, its own way to remember their own fallen, the people from here. You know, their way of mourning the impact of every soldier, every person who grew up here, who has memories here, who never made it back home. Memorials before the First World War didn't always have this somber feeling to it. No, in fact, sometimes they used the wars as propaganda to portray a message, something of a grand scale. For example, Kelheim, the Befreiungshalle, which was used and built to be a message of German greatness, of German unity for a German nation. Let's go check that out. In 1836, King Ludwig I of Bavaria ordered this monument to be built here in Kelheim, Germany, to celebrate the victories, the German victories over Napoleon. It was supposed to serve as a message of not just Bavarian unity, but German unity, during a time where the question of a German nation was very much a topic of discussion. This hall here was supposed to show German superiority, how their heroes fought and led the German people to victory over the French. A massive contrast to the other memorials that we've been looking at or will be looking at through the rest of this video. This massive structure, glorious structure here, overlooking the hills, overlooking the city of Kelheim itself. The Befreiungshalle reflects the 19th century values, triumph, unity, greatness. But it doesn't speak the language of horror and destruction. Rather, it speaks the language of honor and liberation. You look up here, you view in awe. When you look at the memorials in the villages, you feel sadness, not pride. At the top of the stairwell, it says, "The German Freedom War, Ludwig I, King of Bayern." Walking through these halls here, it's just wow. Like a lot of effort and inspirational, and just it really portrays that unity message that they wanted to portray, the idea of a German nation, the idea that the German people was one. But one thing I can't help but notice is reading the plaques here, the different battles like in Dresden, Leipzig, or the different generals. For example, von Sitten, Generalleutnant from Preußen. You know, they're all glorified, memorized here for their glorious actions. But what you don't see are the names of the individual soldiers, the people who fought the battles for these generals. Where's their plaque? Where's their remembrance? I mean, I know this whole thing is supposed to serve as a memory for them, but it kind of shows the difference between the thinking of the 19th century and now, where, you know, only the different class system where the top tier are honored and remembered for their glory, but the individuals aren't. Here we are at a different memorial, this time in the town of Nittendorf. Like so many others, it was erected after the First World War to remember those who fell from Nittendorf in the First World War. After the Second World War, it was expanded though to include those who fell during that tragic war as well. So here at this memorial, here in the center, you see those fallen soldiers representing those of the First World War. And on the two stones on the side here, you have the names of those from the Second World War. And then just down here in the base of the main pillar, you have the names of the missing. And as you come to the side here, you see the names of those who fell during the First World War with their infantry or unit names and some of them where they fell. Here you have something that says where it was created or donated from. And here on the side, again, World War I fallen names. It just really goes to show the impact here that these wars had on these, small communities, because these communities aren't that large. Greatly impacted by the First World War, and then the next generation has another long list of fallen, missing. So earlier on I mentioned that no memorial is the same. Each one is different. Each town has their own individual take on the war and how to remember their fallen. Right here in Parsberg, where we're currently at, has another unique example of how they've done this. As you can see behind me, it already has a kind of a different shape with the appearance of a coffin in the middle with the plaques around it with the names of the fallen soldiers, the missing soldiers from World War I and World War II. Let's go check that out. So this memorial sits on top of a hill going up towards the castle in front of a church. And as you walk down the steps towards it, you enter through these gates here. What appears to be the design of a coffin in the middle, with a rough translation saying, Der du noch lebst, erwische der dich würde alles dem Vaterland geben, which I roughly translate to, even though we wish you were still alive, you gave everything for your fatherland, which is, real powerful words, and it just really shows the different tones that each village uses, every, language and how they portray the different. And here we see a sign basically stating this is a memorial for World War I and World War II. Here we can see the names of those who fell during the First World War. And then begins the plaques of the Second World War. There we have 1, 2, 3, 4 plaques for the Second World War, and 1 plaque for the First World War, which really just boggles your mind, because you think about the First World War, the Western Front, and people charging into no man's land. But as I go through these towns, it's always the same story. The casualties from the Second World War are always much higher during the Second World War, and the missing numbers as well. Like here we see the plaque of missing, vermisst. For example, Johann Jobst, Franz Köbel were all missing, and it continues to go here. As I mentioned, this memorial is on top of a hill and going up towards the local castle. As we can see here, a church. So common denominators, most of the time these memorials are near the vicinity of a church. Not always, but for the most time, or most part. It's really impactful when you start going to these memorials and reading the names. So often when we think about the First or Second World War, we think about the grand battles, the green scheme of things, the politics behind it. Often enough, we don't think about these individual souls, these people who were taken out of their lives and thrown into the battlefields to fight for a cause that they may or may not have believed in. Taken from their families, their friends. There's just lives put on hold. Even if you made it back from the war, your life is put on hold. You're put through horrible things. And I feel a lot of times we don't remember that enough. We remember the grand scheme, but not the people, the individual people. And once you start seeing these plaques, start reading the names, that ignites a switch in your head again, and you realize war just sucks. Now, not including the example of the Befreiungshalle in Kelheim, this right here is the oldest monument I've come across while on this journey. It represents the 1870 and 1871 Franco-Prussian War. Let's go check it out. So I definitely wanted to include this one because this is the oldest example I can find on this journey that's pre-World War I. And it's kind of just got its own different tone to it. It still depicts the sacrifice of those fallen with the individual names from the different communities, but it just has a different vibe to it. Like as you approach here, you can see the writing in gold cursive, that old German. And then as you go around to the sides, you see the different communities attached to this town. Like for example here, Kohler's Reared and Lungenkreuz. And Gemeinde is the German word for like community. And here you see the Gemeindes from Eichkirchen and Neukirchen with their dead inscribed in gold cursive. And as you come here to the side, you see those of the city community of Hemau. If you're interested in this topic, in the description, I'm going to post a website that lists all the different war memorials within Bavaria and all the different towns. So go check that out if you have interest in it. And that concludes today's long video about the individual war memorials for the German dead throughout the different villages. I know it was a long journey, but there's a lot to cover here. As I mentioned, almost every village has their own memorial of some sort to the fallen from those communities. Just like in Great Britain, in France, and any other war that was involved during the First and Second World War, many people fell. Many people tragically lost their loved ones. This is setting aside all the politics, all the grand scheme of the thing. This is about those individual lives that were destroyed. You can drive through any German village, any German town, city, and you will see these memorials. And a lot of the times you walk past them and don't even realize that they're there. And that's what I was trying to do in this video, is to bring a little awareness to those. Because it may have been 80 years ago, 100 years ago, however long, the sacrifice that these people made, they gave up their lives early. And it should not be forgotten. And it should also not be repeated. Anyway, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and let me know if you guys want part 2, because there's so many more memorials that I could have covered, but then the video would have been like 40, 50, 60 minutes. So if you're interested in that, just let me know in the comments, and otherwise I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and I hope we learned something together.